Great. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight as we have our special meeting to initiate or to conduct the different items for the permanent chancellor search. We are calling the meeting to order at 5:05. Let us begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Trustee Jenkins, since you're on my window right here, do you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance. Oh, where's the flag at?
Oh, that's right. Give her a second.
There we go. Okay, good.
Are we ready?
You guys see it?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for
all. Thank you, Trustee Jenkins. Can we do our roll call, please, Madam Board Clerk?
Yes. Trustee Uroni.
Here.
Trustee Withrow.
Here.
Trustee Jenkins.
Here.
Trustee Handy.
Here.
Trustee Delphine Polk.
Here.
Trustee Bonilla.
Here.
Trustee Gonzalez-Yuen.
I'm right here.
And Trustee Reese.
Here.
Madam President, you have quorum.
Thank you. Let's move on to 1.4, the approval of the agenda. I'd like to take one item off of the agenda. Let's take 2.4, which is the revisions to the board policy. Let's take that off the agenda, please. And then could I have a motion to approve the agenda otherwise?
Approval.
Can I?
Yes.
Can we remove 2.2, I believe, which is the community members?
No, we won't be able to.
Are you asking to pull for discussion or remove it from the agenda?
Remove it from the agenda.
Pretty key to the night.
Yep. We could actually have a discussion on it for sure.
Well, why don't we make a motion in a second and then discussion? Does that work? I'll move approval of the agenda with the exception of item 2.4, all other items 1.3 through 2.3.
I'll second that.
Okay, first by Gonzalez-Yuen, second by Withrow. Discussion?
Yeah, so the agenda item for the community members, I haven't been able to get into my Peralta email, so I didn't receive announcement from the Chancellor, so I wasn't able to submit names. And so I was wondering if we can continue the item for a week until our next week's board meeting to allow to submit names.
So the emails, there were 3 different emails. 2 came from the Vice Chancellor of Human Resources. Nothing came from the Chancellor. And then the other one came from me. And so the particular one that came from me, I believe you had received because there were 2 other items on there, which you responded to. And that was, it had 3 items on there, and one was the reminder specifically for the committee to remind you all to get it in by then. But also, even if you couldn't get into your Peralta email, you could have just let me know beforehand so that I could have forwarded your submissions.
I didn't get notification either.
You also have that same email.
No.
We have.
If you're sending notifications embedded in something else, on this before, we got a specific notice. Excuse me, stop shaking your head, please. That's disrespectful.
Go ahead.
We got a specific notice that said it's the last day. Now, because everybody is new, I give credit for that. But there are procedures on something as important as this. If they don't hear from us, they don't assume that we're not interested. This is what happened with the last search. And at the last minute, I found out about it and was able to find a community member to join on it. So if you want to choose to not allow us to expand that, then you'll have to explain to the community when they come and ask why they are not being a part of this process. I mean,
So-
it's that since it's been delayed, there's no reason why we cannot expand it, because we're trying to have community participation in this, correct?
Right. So first, what has been delayed?
You're not doing this correct right away, are you? Aren't they trying to delay this?
We haven't
whole
received.
search piece?
We have not. Are we waiting for the Chancellor's office to tell us whether we can start with a July 1st rather than a March 1st? Yes, we are still waiting, and so we are preparing because we have no idea what his response is going to be.
Yeah.
And so it is either going to be March 1st, and we're going to have to do this. So we are working and going forward under the assumption that we are still at March 1st, because we don't know. We have no idea what he is going to say.
Yeah, I get that, but I think it's just imperative that we have representation. The last time, it was not balanced. It wasn't balanced at all. It was mostly labor and faculty and a few community folks. And not only that, the students, because it was such a tight commitment, that you had to commit to 5 meetings or none at all. If you couldn't do all 5, you couldn't do it at all. That excluded our students from the classroom. I got students that wanted to participate, but they couldn't because it was happening during the day. So I think we should learn from that last experience and try to make sure that this one is as inclusive as possible. So what Kevin Jenkins is saying, and what I'm also saying as well, is we didn't have the notice, we weren't aware, whether you sent them or not. I mean, the Chancellor, she tends to pick and choose what she will send to the email that I actually get my email to, even though I tell people don't write to the Peralta email because I have a problem with it. It doesn't work most of the time. I don't get the messages. So I knew nothing about it either. And if it was sent embedded, as the Chancellor likes to send it in her community meetings or whatever, but not, communicate to us directly, I'm not going to see it.
In response, let me say a couple different things. None of the emails were from the Chancellor, because the Chancellor is completely not involved in this search, because she is the Chancellor that is potentially applying. And so therefore she is excluded from anything associated with the search. That's the first thing. The second is the Vice Chancellor of Human Resources used because of that knowledge, both the AOL email as well as the Peralta email. And for Trustee Jenkins, I'm not sure if it's the Peralta and the Gmail, but I know the Peralta. And then the email that I had sent was a specific reminder that we are adhering to the 1/4 deadline, and to please get your items in. And I also sent that to the AOL email as well.
And I'm sorry, I have to check the junk mailbox because I did not see those. I was surprised when Kevin told me that the process was moving forward. But regardless of that, the real question is, do we want more participation from the community, or do we want to risk not doing that and then hearing from them separately? It's up to you.
Right.
That's
and
what
then,
it is.
but
I think that I don't think that there's any reason why we cannot. And if we don't have a balance committee, then we need to open it up again.
Right. And the second thing that I would say, back to your earlier point about a balance committee, is that board policy, because you had said that it was heavy on faculty and staff, the board policy allots us a maximum of 3 members, and the particular composition of the search committee is very restrictive in terms of how many of each item. So that is adherence to the board policy. So 3 community members is what we are allotted. That is board policy.
And then you have with the academic senate, you had all of these, you have the union leaders, and then you had, And so the bottom line is, when you look at it, and this is what I'm hearing from the community, when you look at it, wow, This is all labor. This is all faculty and staff. We're the rest of us in this scenario. So you know what? I don't want to debate this. You can go on and pretend, all of us can pretend that it doesn't matter to the community when they look at this. If you want this to look like it is a balanced search, because the last one absolutely was not. So if you want it to look right, if you want the optics to be right, then I suggest that you make sure that there is a representation of the communities that we serve, not the representation of the employees that we have.
Right. Again, and I understand what you're saying, and to the point again, the last search that we had completed had 3 community members, which is per the board policy, and the other individuals are per the board policy. And so there's nothing about the composition of the last search that went against or wasn't already institutionalized through our board policy. So we were following that.
Yeah, and what I would say to that, getting feedback from community members that served on that, we need to relook at that board policy, because they were not comfortable with what was taking place in there at all.
And I think that that actually is a very good suggestion, because I think what we need to do is if that is if that's what's out there in terms of what people are hearing and seeing and feeling, then it's that feedback that we need to be able to initiate a change in the board policy, because that makes sense. And we never know. And we never know what's going on and how people feel unless we actually are told that, because otherwise we adhere to our board policy. So that I completely understand. And if that is the direction that we want to go, then I think we need to have that conversation so that we can initiate that process, because obviously the community members are of critical importance to us.
Yeah,
President,
I think we
3 hands up. And I'll just remind us that we are on an agenda item, which is to approve the agenda. We're getting into substantive debate on the item itself, but we do have 3 other hands up.
Okay, let me just go to, I don't know where the hands are. Could you just help me, Nikki?
Let's see, why don't we go to Trustee Bonilla and then Trustee Jenkins, and then come around to me.
Okay.
Sure, thank you. So I was going to bring that issue up. I didn't realize that we were on the item for debate. So we are on the agenda. Can we move? Can we just go according to the agenda so that we can get to the appropriate items so that we can have a deeper discussion?
Yes.
And I'm sorry because my computer is doing all sorts of wonderful things for me.
Yes, and I'm wondering if the other 2 individuals who have their hands up, if it's to the content, because if it's to the content, we have to move away from that and actually talk about it during that particular agenda item number. And so.
Do we have a second on the agenda? I'm sorry, through the chair.
Yeah, we have Trustee Withrow.
And Trustee Jenkins was next.
I'm sorry, I didn't have my hand up.
No, that was for the second of the agenda.
Yeah.
Just
so we're debating the agenda.
Yes, right. I'm voting yes.
Yeah, we just haven't gotten there yet. We're actually having a discussion about the agenda. I think Trustee Jenkins is next, President Reese.
Okay.
Yeah. To the chair, I haven't received anything from you to my Gmail, so it must have gone to Peralta, and that's my thing. I haven't been able to log into my Peralta to see that this process was taking place. So if there were 3 emails, I haven't received any of them, and I haven't been allowed to participate in the process.
Let's see.
Our next person, Trustee.
I think that's me.
Okay.
And then I see your hand up.
So
I'll just.
It's up.
So I guess what I would like is confirmation from staff regarding this. So from HR, where were emails sent? Were they sent in a timely manner? I think that's the procedural question that is in front of us. I think if trustees.
I'm sorry, can I still get clarification through the chair? What item are we on? Are we on agenda approval
Yeah.
or are we on a particular item?
We are on the agenda approval, so let us move on.
Can we get
because,
through
yeah,
this piece?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
let's do a roll call.
Well,
Because
I think there, if I may finish my point, I think this is germane to the question. Trustee Jenkins has said, this process does not seem to be fair. I was not given adequate notice. I did not receive emails, they were not sent, or I did not have access. And I don't know. So I don't know the answer to that question. I think it is incumbent upon every trustee to understand that they do get email. If they're not getting email, to figure out why they're not getting email, provided they understand that they should be getting some kind of email. And then the question is the reasonableness of Trustee Jenkins' objection versus what any trustee would have responsibility for. And that I think, and this is where I'm asking staff, can you verify? I myself got several emails with reminders, plus there was notice at our last meeting. So there were numerous notifications that I received, but I don't pretend to speak for Trustee Jenkins. If we could hear from staff, yes, emails were sent to the full board on the following days. That might be helpful in terms of coming to a determination about the fairness of the process. That's all I'm asking for. I do want it to be fair and inclusive, but I believe that every trustee also has some responsibility for tracking down email, et cetera. So through the chair, President Reese, if I could get some response, if we could get some response from HR, if you think that that is appropriate.
Vice Chancellor McKinley?
Yes. So yes, I personally sent the original emails to each trustee, and I used the official trustee email addresses that are listed on the website, which was to ask you originally to submit them by the 5th. However, since we had to have the agenda items approved and ready to go, in time for this meeting, I'm talking about last Friday, then we moved it up by one day. So we sent out a notice about that. We also sent out a reminder, and then President Reese also sent her own reminder. So there were actually at least 4 emails that were sent to all of the trustees. Now, I will say, and I'm not making excuses, I just want to make, for a point of clarification, that I personally was not aware that trustees were not receiving their email from their official Peralta email addresses. Now, President Reese did send us an extra one for Trustee Handy, because she said that this is the one that she uses most, and we sent another notice out to her just specifically to that email address.
Yeah.
I can also speak to this. I generally, for specifically the new trustees, I have, as a courtesy, I've been CCing or including your personal emails, but for official business, it's usually going to just Peralta. Trustee Handy has shared with me previously that she does not get emails at her other one, or she checks her personal one more frequently. So I've been including those, and so I would need to know. And we would need, that that's required for you if you need that. And always, whenever you can't get into your Peralta email, let me know. There's another trustee that had that same issue recently, and we had to work through it for her, and she let me know right away. So I knew to send it to her other email.
And just as a follow-up, if I might, is it my correct memory that at our last board meeting, we were also given notice of this process and reminded of this process? That's my memory, but maybe I'm making that up, and I want to clarify. Again, this speaks to the question of fairness and whether everybody is on the same page, has adequate fair notice. That's all I'm trying to determine here.
Yeah. Well, Nikki, I just checked under Maisha, under Ronald McKinley, and under Cindy Reese, and I have nothing Cindy, our last communication was one-way communication. It wasn't about that, and that was last Tuesday. So I don't know. I don't doubt that people tried to contact us, but I just did a search on the AOL, and I have one date, mime attachment from Ronald McKinley. Maisha, I have the board meetings and stuff, not that. And Cindy, the last meeting was not regarding that. It was another conversation we were having. So I don't know what's happening. I don't think it's a deliberate, but clearly I don't have it. And I have never used Peralta AOL mail, Peralta mail in 18 years. And people know why, because my email is constantly hacked. So whenever we have these meetings, I have to forward it to the Peralta email to have the Zoom, because that's the only way I can have the Zoom on here. But that is not there. I don't really get mail in there. And then I get a lot of notices that for whatever reason, I'm very popular with the Russians. And our cybersecurity person has notified me many times. And one time I actually got hacked through there somehow. And the next thing I knew, they were ordering Ubers in New Zealand.
Okay.
So I don't use it.
Okay, so then we're still at the approval of the agenda. Let's, and I'm hearing both of you. I am hearing both of you. Let us, because we haven't even gotten to public communication yet. So let us move to how do, Natasha, legal, can you opine on what?
You need to take a vote on the motion that's before you. If you would like to consider Trustee Jenkins as a request for an amendment to that motion, that could be considered. But otherwise, you could just go forward with the vote as it is and then move forward from that item. That, of course, allows you to continue your discussion and debate when you get to the item agendized, and all of these issues can be considered then.
Okay, all of them, right? All of the issues, including the amendment, including possible nomination, whatever it is, all of that could be included at that particular point. So to move the meeting forward, let us approve the agenda, knowing that we are going to come back to this in substantive conversation once we get to 2.2. Are we all on the same page?
You need a roll call vote.
Yes, exactly. Okay, roll call, Madam Board Clerk.
Yes, Student Trustee Yeroni.
I'm sorry?
Student Trustee Yeroni.
Student trustee.
Yes. Yeah. And then.
Can we use the correct title, please? Thank you.
Okay.
And just to clarify, the student trustee makes an advisory vote, and based on our past practice, that vote comes at the beginning of the trustee roll call.
Right.
Okay. Trustee Withrow.
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins.
Yes.
Trustee Handy.
Yes.
Trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes.
Trustee Bonilla.
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez-Yuen.
Yes.
And Trustee Reese.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes.
Thank you for that. We do not have minutes to approve. That's 1.5. So can we move on to 1.6?
We actually have the minutes from January 5th meeting uploaded.
Oh, do we approve that at this meeting or do we approve it at the next actual board meeting? Legal?
You can approve it. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from if it's agendized properly, you can consider it.
Sure. Okay. Do we may I have a motion to approve the minutes from the January 5th board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got a first and a second by Bonilla and Gonzalez-Yuen. Roll call, please.
Okay, Student Trustee Yeroni.
Yes.
Trustee Withrow.
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins.
Yes.
Trustee Handy.
Yes.
Trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes.
Trustee Bonilla.
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez-Yuen.
Yes.
And Trustee Reese.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you for that. And now we move on to public.
President Reese, your hand is raised in Zoom.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you've been made a co-host, but I think normally
Yes, if you
staff
could,
makes you
Maisha, that would be
co-host as
great.
well. Thank you.
Okay, and then we're at public communication, Vice President.
Thank you. We have 4 speakers for public communication in the following order: Jennifer Shanosky, Sarob Jyotimali, Donald Moore, and Marcus Johnson. Jennifer Shanosky, Madam Clerk, if you could let President Shanosky in. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. If we're going to keep up with this new letting you see me, I'm going to start dressing nicer for our board meetings. So I want to first start with a comment about the recent EdSource article that I'm sure you've all read by now. The article quotes former and current district administrators and others claiming that the board's leadership is closely allied with PFT and focus more on appeasing the union than doing its job. These characterizations are presumably offered to undermine efforts within the district to improve the many areas in need of our attention. The characterizations offered in EdSource are inaccurate and unwarranted. PFT, like every community college labor organization, faculty, and classified, maintains a working relationship with the district's administration and its governing board. There's nothing nefarious about such relationships. They are essential to mutual understanding and working together to fulfill the needs of faculty, students, classified staff, and the community. Indeed, PFT, as the bargaining agent for almost 1,000 faculty members, has a responsibility to routinely communicate with the district over wages, hours, and terms and conditions of employment. Such union-district relations are not always smooth. After the pandemic struck, PFT requested negotiations with the district on a variety of COVID-19 related issues affecting faculty employment. The district refused to negotiate and acted unilaterally as to some issues, leading us to file an unfair labor practice charge. That the PERB, the Public Employment Relations Board General Counsel, issued a complaint against the district based on those charges on November 4th, 2020, and they're now before PERB for settlement discussions and a possible hearing. One of the administrators named in PFT's charges is the former chancellor. PERB filed these charges to vindicate the rights of faculty. The charges would hardly have been needed if PFT was being appeased. PFT and the district will soon meet to attempt to resolve our differences, part of the PERB's normal process. And we are naturally hopeful that we can resolve the pending PERB complaint. I'd like to take the remainder of my time tonight to remember my colleague and friend, Bill Love, whose passing I learned of today. I met Bill on the first day of my full-time employment at a district-wide flex day that I arrived to without much direction and no friends. I didn't know anybody. I'd met Bill at my interview and I saw him sitting alone at a table eating breakfast. So I took my plate and my cup of coffee over to him and asked if I could sit down. And we started talking and he gave me advice and some anecdotes that I'll never forget about what I had in front of me as a Peralta faculty member. Bill and I became friends that day and we've remained friends up until the end. Bill called me often over the years. He'd pick up the phone and in his booming voice that I'm sure all of you have heard, he'd say, "Shanask," which is his nickname for me. And he'd give me advice and anecdotes that never stopped. And I've been grateful for both over the years. Bill always talked about making our colleges the best they could be for people that looked like him. And he was always unafraid to demand that faculty voices were heard loud and clear in that quest. I can't count the number of times I saw Bill stand up in a meeting citing AB 1725 and demanding that faculty had their voices heard. Bill never shied away from difficult conversations, and I always knew where he stood. Everyone did. But he was honest, he was direct, and he was never afraid to pick up the phone and have the conversation. So you always knew where you stood with him too. And of course, Bill was a beacon of light for his students, the many students that packed his classroom and adored him for the second chance that he provided again and again. Bill will be missed by all of us touched by his presence. I ask tonight that we adjourn in his memory And going forward, we keep his booming honesty, his commitment to students, and his fierce advocacy for faculty at the center of all the work that we do. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you very much, President Chnosky. The next speaker for in public comment is Sarabjot Mali, and excuse me if I have not correctly pronounced your name.
I don't see that person. I sent you a message in the chat, Vice President Ewan. There's a number that I'm not sure who it is. Doesn't have a name, but it's not the registry or registered Malsi like we.
I see.
Expecting.
Okay. Well, why don't we see if we can figure that out? If in fact Sarabjot shows up or makes themselves known, we can come back around, and then we will have Donald Moore, President of the Academic Senate. President Moore, you're up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Donald Moore. I am the District Academic Senate President. I also, too, mourn the loss of Bill Love. I hope at the next regular meeting, that there is some kind of time for us to reflect on Bill Love, because him, over the holidays, we knew he was in hospice, and then today we heard that he passed away. But I also want to speak to Anita Black. These two individuals have been stewards of Peralta for the last 40, 50 years, particularly with Bill, and Anita for many years as well. And I think that both of them, it's a generation gone, particularly from our faculty, from our retired faculty. These individuals have been there when we created the Senate back at Peralta. Peralta was one of the first ones, as people know the history of it. And so anyhow, I hope that you all do something to acknowledge these stewards of Peralta. I wanted to speak briefly on the BP for the search. I appreciate the work and the diligence that the board and the HR have done on it. There's some concerns. I think I really want to see, when we do chancellor search, that we take the time necessary to do good chancellor searches, because of the amount of money we invest in not only our chancellor, but in the work that they do, and we want them to stay around for a long time. We need to make it a regular practice that we take our time with the search. And what I mean by that is, one, we were put in a very difficult situation, because at the last selection of the chancellor, we had 2 candidates, but not, I think it was 5 candidates that were needed. Today, you listed in this BP 3 to 5. And my concern again would be, well, how about if you don't get 3, or how about if you don't get 5? At what point does the consultant or the HR vice chancellor say, go to the board president and say, hey, the bank or the candidates doesn't look like there's enough. Should we, go back out or something? I think there needs to be some kind of decision making at that point. What we got the last time was, because of time constraints and other external issues, we weren't able to do that. And I really think we need to have some flexibility. Finally, I am concerned about the may go on a site visits. I totally recognize that if the person is from the final candidates, one is from Maryland, let's say, that it would be difficult to go over there for a site visit. But my point is that Without it, it will just be ignored. And I'm talking about in the future when the board members today aren't here and at some other time. And part of the difficulty is that it really helps by going to the physical site and talking with your counterparts. And we've done that here at Peralta a number of times and didn't do that for this one. What we did, in fact, for the last one was make telephone calls. And those telephone calls were very, very informative. But there wasn't a clear way by which I could then communicate those concerns and issues that were raised to the president.
I'm going to need to mute you.
You could wrap up. You are out of time.
So anyhow, my point is that we need to make sure we specify in an AP about how that process happens.
Thank you very much. And you may, I think you probably did notice we moved that item off of the agenda today. So the academic senates and other consultative bodies will have time to chime in on that BP. Thank you very much, President Moore. I misspoke when I said we had 4 public speakers. We actually have a 5th, and that's Corey Hollis. But why don't we let in Marcus Johnson?
Corey Hollis is actually here as a community member, so I've moved him back.
And is Marcus Johnson in the room yet?
No, I do not see a Marcus Johnson.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead with Corey Hollis and we'll see. And if Sarbjot Mali is present, please do send me a notice so we can know you're here. Thank you.
Corey Hollis was here as a community member, and so he was not to be a panelist, so I've moved him back to attendee.
I see. Okay, but we're allowing him to speak for public comment. Yes?
I don't believe he was here for public comment.
I see. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Madam President, I believe then we've gone through public comment of those people who have made themselves known to us. If in fact there's somebody here for public comment who signed up, please message me in the chat or make yourself known otherwise. And otherwise, let us move forward, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you for all of our public speakers. Let's move to the action items. We are at 2.1, consider selecting a firm to assist the district in conducting a nationwide search for a new PCCD chancellor. Dr. McKinley, I'm going to turn that over to you.
Thank you, President Reese. So yes, our first candidate firm is AGB Search, and the presenter will be Roderick McDavis, who is the managing principal. So Madam Board Clerk, if you could please move Dr. McDavis in, that would be great.
He's in now.
Roderick, are you there?
Here I am.
All right, very good. So you now have the 15 minutes that we've talked about to make your presentation to the board. So please go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. McKinley. President Reese, members of the board, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to share a brief presentation with you. First, I just want to talk about some points of pride that we found about Peralta. You serve more than 30,000 students, a very diverse group of students that you serve. We embrace your values of student success, equity, diversity, financial health, environmental sustainability, collaboration, trust, employee development, communication, and respect. And we also appreciate the fact that you provide opportunities for students in your community who otherwise may not be able to get a college education. The 2 consultants that we've identified to work on this search are Dr. Carlos Hernandez and Dr. Kim Bobby. Dr. Hernandez would come to you with a great deal of search experience. He's been with our firm since 2013. He's a former president of the New Jersey City University for 19 years. He's done a number of presidential searches and chancellor searches in our firm over the time that he's been a part of us, and he would be the lead consultant. We also would have Dr. Kim Bobby, who is a former Chief Diversity Officer at the University of Puget Sound, former Chief of Staff at Prince George's Community College. She's been with the firm for the past few years, and she's also been involved in a wide variety of presidential searches during the time that she has been part of our firm. AGB Search is a part of AGB, which is over 100 years old, the Association of Governing Boards. We are 10 years old, and we are a subsidiary of AGB, and we work exclusively in the higher education sector. We do full search, we do interim search, and we do something we call compensation evaluation service, which is to determine the appropriate salaries for presidents, chancellors, and members of the cabinet. We have over 45 search consultants in our firm. We have conducted over 700 engagements, and we have a 98% success rate. The value proposition that we bring to our work focuses on expertise, commitment, and results. Our AGB affiliation that I pointed out is part of what we're all about. We have extensive search experience in our firm. All of our consultants have done a wide variety of searches. They are uniquely qualified, and we have a commitment. Our commitment is to focus on client success. So our responsibility to you is to partner with you so that we focus on finding you the very best chancellor that we can. All of us have a passion for higher education, and we have a respect for our clients, but also we have a respect for our candidates, because these are people who would come to you in the hope that they would be your next chancellor. So we try to work with them very closely and respect them as well. We focus on a diverse pool of candidates. Over 50% of our placements are either women or people of color. We're very proud of that. Most of the people, 93% of the folks that we help to place stay in their position for 5 years or more. We're very proud of that. And we don't leave you until you're happy with the person who's been identified as your next chancellor. We believe in building an inclusive pool of candidates. We do that through our advertising. We do that through our networking. We do that through our outreach. We do that through our position profile and our ad. We will reach as many different people across the country as we can to make sure that your pool of candidates is inclusive and will not stop at any point until we are confident that we have built that kind of pool for you. We believe that some of the most important attributes for the next chancellor of Peralta Community College District would be innovation, vision, to have a future orientation, to be about change leadership, to focus on shared governance, which we think is very important, to focus on crisis management, to have great people skills, and to be entrepreneurial. Our search would basically be in 3 chunks. We would do some pre-work, listening sessions. We would listen to what you want in the next president in terms of qualities, attributes, and skills. We would then build a very, very strong pool of candidates. We take 4 to 6 weeks to do that. We would then work with the search committee to review those candidates in the pool and to help you identify those top candidates in the pool, whether they be internal candidates or external candidates. Then we would work with the search committee to make sure that we would organize the interview process, both the semifinal round and the finalist round. We've done most of our work since March of 2020 virtually. So we would carry you through all of your search committee meetings and certainly up to the semifinal round virtually. And then after that, we would work with you on how you wanted to do your finalists. We would then work with you and turn over those final candidates to the board for its disposition, for your selection. And then we would be with you for a year after you appointed your chancellor, to work with the chancellor and the board to make sure that the selection of the candidate was the right selection, and to make sure that the chancellor is off to the best start possible. Madam President, let me stop there and see if you might have any questions for me in terms of the presentation that I've shared with you.
Yes, trustees, do we have any questions at this point? I'm looking to see if there are any hands up. No questions, trustees? Okay.
I have a question. I was just trying to get to the button. Sorry.
Yes.
You just said something that was interesting, that you would actually follow that chancellor.
Yes.
For the year after them being identified. Can you tell me how that process has worked for you in the past?
one of the strengths of our presidential searches, Madam Trustee, in that what we believe is that our research has indicated that most of the problems that occur for a new chancellor or a new president occur in year one. So what we've added to our services, which would be paid for, by the way, in the basic search fee, there's no additional cost. We believe that by working with the new presidents and chancellors for that first year, that has helped us to get that 93% success rate over the first 5 years. And so our experience shows us that most of the problems that occur in year one. So by working very closely with the new chancellor, by working very closely with the president of the board and the board in general, we can identify any problems that come up in that first year and help to get around those problems and to work through those problems so that we can get the chancellor and the board to the second year where things begin to get much better. So if a president or a chancellor gets to that second, third, fourth year without a lot of problems behind them, we find that the success rate is much longer than it ordinarily would be. So it's something we embrace and believe in a lot.
Thank you.
Any other questions, trustees? I think at this point, we still do not have any other questions. Did you want to continue?
Yes, please. So the next candidate firm is Myers McRae, and the presenters will be Emily Myers and Kenny Doherty. So Madam Clerk, if you could please move those two individuals into the room.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Ron.
I saw Mr. Doherty. I do not see Myers.
I'm here. Miss Myers is joining us by phone, and she may be the one that you have on there that shows the phone number. So if you would admit her, thank you.
Will do. Doing right now. Okay, she's not allowed to talk now.
Pardon?
She is now allowed to talk. I've
Okay,
enabled her.
great. All right. Well, thank you. Let me say thank you to.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, go ahead, Kenny, if you wish to start, and I will follow.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to talk with you tonight, or tonight where we are anyway, and we look forward to telling you about Myers McRae and how we go about doing our business and how we could assist you. And I will, with that, turn it over to Emily Myers, our CEO, and let her start.
Thank you so much, and we are very pleased to be speaking with you this evening. And as Kenny mentioned, we're on the other coast, but I think today in search, as you all know, most of the time now we are unable to travel to go to an institution. And so we would be working with you, of course, by phone and by Zoom and all the other modern ways to conduct searches. And we've had to do this now for probably close to a year, a little over a year. Myers McRae, executive search firm, has been in the search business for 3 decades. And Kenny and I looked at your search and looked at what was going on with your institution. And instead of selecting some of our consultants to work with you, we felt like you needed some experienced people to come and work with you on this search. Kenny and I are both longtime higher education administrators, and we've been doing search now for 14 years in this firm. And we understand what you're looking for. We understand the issues and the problems that go on inside of higher education. And we think we can bring to you some excellent candidates. And we've had extensive careers in higher education. I think that sometimes search committees feel like there's something magic about search. It is not. What search is really about is having a great database of the best candidates in the country, which we have. and to then look at the placement percentages. Who do we place and how long do they stay in institutions? We work in just about every state in this country, and our rate of candidates that stay in their positions for 4 or more years is at 90%. I'll tell you how many searches we do every year. We do probably 50, 60, 65 searches a year. And again, they could be all over the country. It's the thing about our search firm is that the consultants, we don't like to have lots and lots of consultants. We presently have 6 consultants that work in addition to me or Kenny. But what we do with our consultants is that we will also help them specifically when they are working on a search, so that we don't leave anything to just one person. Because sometimes if you only have one person working on a search, they don't have time to do the kind of in-depth conversations that they need to do with your prospects. And we would work very carefully to develop a profile for you that will talk about this position. We will send it to probably 30,000 prospects at least in this country. We have a 95% delivery rate. And then they have all the information. They can look at pictures of your campus. They can look at all the information. And then if they want to, they can call us or they can send us information and we will get back in touch with them. So we can actually give you a wonderful list of candidates. I think you will have a search committee, and that committee would work very closely with us, and we would stay in touch with them every day to make sure that we are on top of what they're thinking and what they're wanting. We have done some research on your institution, and we're a little concerned because you've had, I think, probably some not long careers, shall we say, in this position. And so we would want to work with you to say, help us understand what you think you need that maybe you didn't find in the candidates that you've had maybe over the last, I'm assuming you had searches, so that we can address that. There's nothing magic about this business at all. It's hard work, it's great connections, and it's understanding higher education. And we can bring all of that to you. The other thing we do is we give you probably some of the best prices of the top firms in this country. There has been a group of firms, about 50, that have been considered at the top. After this year, which has been very difficult for all of us, that group of top firms now is 30. And so what has happened on our college campuses is that many of them are not doing searches anymore right now. And of this top 30, Myers-McRae is one of them. So I would say to you, we understand what you need at this point for us to look for and what has been going on in your institution. We will bring you great candidates. You'll have a very close relationship with us. Your committee will. And we certainly would love to work with you. Now, Kenny, I want to give you a chance to jump in here and cover all the things I haven't said.
Yeah, and I may just reiterate a couple of things. I want to drill down a little bit with what Emily has talked to you about in experience. It is important to know that our experience is in the academy. We know you're making decisions, financial decisions, but we also know you're making decisions about students and student success and how do we help students in access and recruiting students. All of those things, because we've been in those chairs and we've had to do it. And so that's a piece as we put together and talk to candidates that we understand. We understand the questions to ask, and we understand sometimes when the answers are they, do they really know the answer, or are they just giving us some stock answer? The other experience is conducting searches. Emily and I have done over 250 searches. Searches take their own life, own what I call paths sometimes. Because we've done so many, if they take a side path or there's a hiccup or there's anything along the way, we know how to have that back on track or to keep it on track, because sometimes those things just happen in a search. But we've worked so much with so many different searches at all different levels that we've seen a lot of it occur in a search. Emily talked about our access to candidates. Let me talk about us dealing with candidates. Candidates, we work extensively with candidates. You know what? Many times they may not be qualified for the position that they call us about, but they are so comfortable with us that they continue to reach out to us. I just had a call today with a candidate from Lewiston, Idaho, about a position in North Carolina. So we're recruiting nationally, as she mentioned, but he wanted to talk. He wanted a little bit of time to talk about that position. We spent the time with him. It helped us get to know him better. And it helped us in that same sense be able to help and advise that search committee. We Zoom with candidates. We obviously talk with them on the phone, but we spend time on Zoom with them because we believe this. If we can provide you with the best information and the most information, that search committee and ultimately your board, if we can provide you with those kinds of that kind of information, you'll make a better choice, because you want to talk about someone. It's important to talk about fit and tenure and longer tenures. There are all kinds of pieces to that, and we want to talk to those candidates about do they want to live in the region? Is that attractive to them? What attracts them to you? Are they looking for a job, or are they looking for your position to make a difference for your students and to help your faculty and staff grow? Those are the kinds of things we do. I want to take that relationship to Canada. We keep it even after we place them. And I'm going to give you one example of a provost we just placed. First time provost. We actually recruited him out of California to go to South Carolina. And he calls and says, you know, I don't know. He said, this is difficult. My first time, he had a little bit of a difficult situation. His president left after about 3 months after he'd been there, and that's one we never liked. And I said, well, wait a minute. I got Emily on the phone. And I said, Emily, we have somebody we placed that would be a good mentor for this person. And so she said, absolutely. I have a great person that we placed about 5 years ago. They're very experienced, provosts in 2 different institutions, and they would be great to help them. I connected the 2 of them, and it has been just sometimes just for a wonderful sounding board, frankly, but it is a way to help them be successful, because we want them to be successful, because ultimately, at the end of the day, the success of your chancellor will have a direct impact on the success of your students. And that's why in education, we do what we do. And that's Emily and I, that's our contribution. After having worked in it a long time, that is still our contribution to higher education and to, again, the success of the young, not always young men and women, I like to say that, but students that we work with every day. So with that, I'll kind of stop and open it up for the, see if the committee has questions for either of us.
Thank you for that. Trustees, do we have any questions? I'm just looking through my list to see if there are any hands up. Okay. One last call. Any questions? All right.
Thank you very much. So if Madam Board Clerk, if you would please move Myers McCray out of the room, please.
Thanks,
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then our next candidate firm is R.H. Perry and Associates, and there will be 3 presenters, Paul Doug, Jesse Thompson, and John Hutchinson. So, Madam Clerk, if you could please move R.H. Perry and Associates into the room. Thank you.
Okay, I have, can you say the names? I just let in John Hutchinson. Who's the other name?
Paul Doeg, D-O-E-G,
Okay.
and Jesse Thompson.
Okay, they are all, they all should all be in now. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So, Paul, if you're there.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you very much. I know my colleagues, Jesse Thompson and John Hutchinson, are queuing in here. John, if you would just unmute, and Jesse, I don't see video for you yet. There we go. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate the chance to talk with you this evening, and in the pursuit of the next chancellor for the Peralta Colleges. And my name is Paul Doeg. I'm president and chief operating officer of R.H. Perry. I've been with the firm for nearly 20 years now and have served the last 4 as president. And my colleagues, Jesse Thompson and John Hutchinson, will introduce themselves and then we'll begin. Jesse, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jesse Thompson. I've been with R.H. Perry and Associates now for 7 years, and I have had the opportunity to see community colleges from every aspect, in that I graduated from a community college before I went on and graduated from 3 other universities. And I also was fortunate enough to be elected to serve as a trustee. So I've been able to see community colleges from that perspective, and then worked more than 20 years as executive vice president and chief financial officer.
Great, thank you, Jesse. John.
Yes, my name is John Hutchinson. Good evening, everyone. Good evening where we are anyway. I was originally a faculty member, and I served both at Michigan State University and Idaho State University before going into administration. First at Idaho State University, then I went on to Montana to become the state's commissioner of higher education, and then left the higher education central office to go back to campus work, first at Northern State University in South Dakota, and then moved into the private side. I worked at Beacon College in Florida, which is an institution you've probably never heard of, but it's at the time was the only 4-year accredited institution in the United States that served exclusively students with learning disabilities. And I was also president at Lincoln College and Thomas University. I've been with R.H. Perry now for going on 8 years.
Great. Thank you both. R.H. Perry and Associates has been in business since 1975, and in that time frame, our firm has seen to completion nearly 1,100 assignments, serving more than 350 institutions in that time frame. And in 2010, we launched our practice serving community and technical colleges. And since 2010, we've seen to completion 63 assignments, 36 of which have been for presidents. I'm pleased to report that we have an excellent track record in attracting candidates who remain with their institutions for longer than 5 years. 22 out of the last 23 searches for presidents that we have conducted have stayed in office at least for 5 years. And during that time, of course, we have developed a strong knowledge and understanding of the marketplace in community and technical college leadership. And my 2 colleagues, Jesse and John, and I would team together to serve the Peralta Colleges Board of Trustees and the colleges themselves to firstly find out the precise challenges and opportunities that are present. Of course, we've had a chance to review some of the recent publicity for the colleges, but we would need a lot more information to go on to find you great candidates. And so I want to turn it over to Jesse Thompson to talk a little bit more about what makes R.H. Perry distinctive.
Thank you, Paul. One of the things that I think is outstanding about our firm is the fact that we look at what team we feel that would be best for whichever institution that we are seeking to assist. And with this particular team that Paul mentioned, we have more than 60 years of combined experience in higher education, administration, and executive search work. That experience translates into our ability to make sure that our process is rooted in best practices, it's thorough, it's transparent, and we have clearly defined benchmarks that would guide the process. And John Hutchinson will talk more about that. Also, we have a search committee handbook that we can provide to you that will help you as we're going throughout the process. And one big thing is our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I know everyone says that at this point. However, I think our record speaks for itself. Since 2012, of the individuals selected from the searches that we've conducted, 63% have been individuals who have been underrepresented in higher education leadership positions. So that doesn't happen by coincidence. It has to do with how we go about doing our work. Also, one thing that's unique with us is our due diligence. And I do not know of many firms that early on do the type of work that we do, so that before the search committee begins to decide who to move forward as a semifinalist, we work with the top candidates based on the committee's evaluations, and we provide a Zoom video interview of that candidate for you, so you can have additional information. And we also have a audio reference interviews to help you in terms of making your decision. And then for the finalists, we do a deeper dive in terms of additional references, and then background checks, so that we know everything about the person's background, if you will. And then finally, we are not new to doing work virtually because of two reasons. One, as a company, because we have offices throughout the United States, we have always used this type of technology. And then secondly, since COVID hit back in March, when everything closed down, we have completed about 26 searches through this process. So we are very well versed in using this technology, and we would be flexible in leveraging this for you.
Great. Thank you, Jesse. John, will you just do an executive summary of the search process itself before we get into questions?
Sure. Thank you. President Reese and members of the board, let me again say thank you for this opportunity. I will be very brief on the process and try to answer any questions that you might have if you need more detail. But in effect, we do our search in 5 phases. We can be flexible, so this can be adjusted. But the first phase is what we call needs assessment and marketing. And during this time, we do what is called a pre-search study, which would in this case be a comprehensive virtual assessment with various constituent groups to find out what is desired in the next chancellor for your colleges. And then we develop a very fine executive search profile. Our second phase we call recruitment and candidate management, and here we will broadcast the opportunity. We do so in 4 ways. 1, we will place ads although ads typically don't generate your strongest candidates. Sometimes they do, but not always. And then we have a massive database. That's our second approach. And we will broadcast this opportunity to literally thousands of people who might be interested or who can tell us of individuals that might be interested in the position. Then third, we have our own contacts. All three of us have a number of contacts around the country that we will specifically contact in order to see if they have any ideas or who might themselves be interested in the position. And then finally, we will work with input from the campus. If you folks have any ideas of individuals who might be good candidates for this position, then we are all ears. Our third phase would be selection and evaluation. And here we will assist the search committee, whatever advisory body is there, in the selection of top candidates. Once those top candidates are identified, then as Jesse pointed out, we do our preliminary due diligence and provide that information to the committee. And then the semifinal interviews are conducted virtually in this case, and the finalists are selected. Once those finalists are selected, we move into phase 4, where we complete thorough due diligence. We set up and assist the committee in campus interviews. We are also prepared to do psychometric testing of the finalists to determine if those individuals would be a good fit. It's one data point. It's not the only data point, but a good one that can be used. And then we will also assist in setting up those interviews for the finalists. And then finally, there is appointment and closure. We will assist the board in its efforts to select the top candidate that they want to offer the position to. We are prepared to assist in that offer if you so desire, and assist in making closure. Then we will stay with the candidate throughout the first year of service to see if there are any issues or problems that might crop up. And we are prepared then to assist in resolving those issues to the best of our ability. So in a nutshell, then, that would be the process that we would use. As I said, however, we can be flexible and adjust according to the needs of your campuses.
Thank you, John. Let's pause here and take questions.
Thank you for that. Trustees, do we have any questions? Yes, we do have a question. Trustee Bonilla.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for that thorough presentation. I may have missed this, you may have talked about it, but did you present or discuss a timeline? What is a typical timeline from beginning to end?
I'll take that one. Thank you, Madam Trustee. I appreciate the question. Customarily, a search for a chancellor or a president can take anywhere from 4 to 6 months, depending on how much lead time is allotted and what time of year the search begins, whether there are holidays or breaks in between. For this assignment, though, I would estimate that it would take about 4 to 5 months, probably 5 months. And if we were to begin, in relatively short order, if we were the firm selected, we think that we could get a search accomplished for a July 1 start date for the selected candidate.
Thank you for that. And then through the chair, I do have a follow-up if there are no other questions.
Yes, please do, Trustee Bonilla.
Given that we are in a state of the pandemic and we're not sure when there will be face-to-face interactions, how has this impacted or come up in terms of dialogue when we're looking for a best fit? We're going to be virtual. We're doing a lot of Zoom. The physical presence on campus is an important one that we know we're going to return to. And so how is this being thought of as part of the recruitment and retention strategy? Thank you.
Excellent question. Jesse, do you want to take a whack at this one?
Yes. As John mentioned, we are very flexible. And depending on where things would stand, we could look at doing a combination of things, but we will, after we meet with you during the pre-search study and have some idea of what you think options should be, when we reach out to candidates, we give them information in terms of what it looks like. The candidate visits to the campus would be, whether that would be virtually or whether that would be some other type of combination. And we've been looking at the pros and cons of trying to do them virtually. We've done that, and people have been very pleased with the outcome, both the candidate and then the institution. And then we have done others where there's been some modification and they were able to see individuals on campus because they had the space to make sure that they could social distance and that type of thing. But then, you know, there are still issues there in terms of when you have the mask on, you lose somewhat in terms of the communication, the nonverbal, because you're not able to see the person smile and things like that. So those are things that we would discuss with you, and we would work out something that's going to be advantageous for you and meet your needs.
Thank you for that. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank
I
you.
did have a question.
Trustee Handy?
I don't know if you could see my hand.
Yes, go ahead, Trustee Handy.
Okay, my question is this: what has been your experience with expedited searches, and how have you had any expedited search during the past 9 months during the COVID period?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. In fact, we're doing one right now where we are reaching close to a conclusion for an institution in Texas where we started in November and we're reaching a conclusion at the beginning of February. We've done searches as quickly as 75 days. We've also had searches that have stretched nearly 11 months. I could go into reasons for both of those. But suffice to say that an expedited process is only going to be effective if everything really aligns right for the Board of Trustees and the search committee to be able to make the meetings. I would insist upon 8 weeks of recruitment. I really feel like we need time, that amount of time to develop a strong and rich pool of candidates for your consideration. We've done searches that have done it in 6 weeks, but then it's just really about timing and how often can the committee meet. We've found that in the virtual space that actually meetings are more efficient than during in-face meetings because you can have them more frequently. They can be scheduled a little bit more efficiently for everyone's benefit. It's really a process that takes that requires points in time to take the time to get it right. Due diligence is another area where we need 2 weeks to contact references who are off list, who have not been provided by the candidates themselves, and that takes research and that takes time to get that done. So there are places in the search process that can be economized, if you will, in terms of time, but there are certain points in the search process that do require substantial time. I guess I would ask, how quickly are you looking to get a search accomplished?
And our initial piece that we have is March 1st. If we're in a process, perhaps the state chancellor may look at it differently, but right now we do have a deadline. But I think that in all of it, it will be reasonable as long as we're showing that we are actually moving through the process. And then I did have one more question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
On another board that I served on, we had to, during COVID, surprisingly, it was a very fast turnaround. We actually only had 2 weeks on that search. But we found that we had over 100 applications for the CEO and 75 for the COO. Yes, and I attribute that to COVID. A lot of people are out of jobs. A lot of people returned to their home states that may have been working remotely. But it seems that there were surprisingly very qualified candidates at that point, and we had a difficult time whittling it down. I was just wondering if you could just give me briefly your experience in the changes that you've seen in this recruitment process with some of the searches you've been doing during COVID.
Sure, I'll start, and Jesse and John, please feel free to chime in. With the advent of this global pandemic, what we found is that boards of trustees were asking their presidents and chancellors to stay longer. Chancellors were asking their vice presidents to stay on past planned transition stages. And, you know, for 3 or 4 months, there was a near stoppage in turnover. What we found is that there are probably fewer opportunities, but just as many, if not more, people who are interested in those opportunities. And so the pools that we have seen in some of our searches have yielded numbers along the lines that you just shared, Trustee Handy. I can't promise that for this search, but what I can say is that we will canvass our networks and produce a pool of candidates who are interested in serving your college.
And before you switch over, Paul, let me ask one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you experienced resistance to California? This is a nationwide search. Have you picked up, or has it become any type of norm or so where people have challenges with positions in California because of the high cost of living here?
Yes, we have experienced challenges. However, what is important in part of the process that we go through in talking with candidates is to apprise them, firstly, of the salary considerations that are approved by the board. And we're very upfront about that in our process of recruiting and soliciting input for candidates. We ask candidates to do a little bit of homework themselves before they really proceed forward, even to a public phase. We ask them to consider any transitional issues or challenges that might be difficult to overcome. So we've been doing this a long time, and of course there's going to be some candidates who self-select out, who won't come to California for one reason or another. But I can assure you that California is a very attractive place for people to come visit and live and work. And so there's probably an equal number of people who want into California as those who want out.
That's interesting. Okay. Thank you.
I might just add, if I may, one of our largest clients is in the Bay Area over the years, and we've done a number of searches with that institution. I personally have done several with the institution. And yes, there are some candidates who are not going to be interested in coming to California, but we had robust pools in all of those, and some of them were rather difficult searches to attract candidates to. So I don't lack confidence in our ability to attract good pools for you folks.
Okay, thank you.
Jesse, any thoughts on any of Trustee Handy's questions?
No, just in terms of individuals wanting to work in California. When I'm recruiting for positions on the East Coast, there are some people who will say, I'm not interested, but let me know if you get anything in California. So it goes both ways.
It's too cold. I get it.
Thank you for the questions.
Thank you.
I'd like to also add one more thing, if I may. I know we've taken a lot more time than we were initially given, and we're grateful for it. One of the most important elements of our process right now is working on implicit bias training with search committee, and to go through a process of a training process, if you will, at the outset of the search that helps search committees recognize their own biases, and in turn applying that to the review of applications of people who will be considered for the position. And I just want to say that it just really underscores our commitment to a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. And we found that this effort that we're going through with search committees really yields some interesting and I'd say positive results. So I would close by saying thank you for the opportunity to talk with you tonight, and happy to answer any additional questions you have.
Thank you so much for that. I believe that we do not have any more questions from trustees as I look. Okay, we're good. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul, and your team. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. McKinley.
You're welcome.
Trustees, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Madam Clerk, if you could please then move the R.H. Perry and Associates team out. And then the next candidate firm is Spellman Johnson, and the presenter will be Ellen Heffernan.
Okay, she is in.
Hi, everyone.
Hi there.
Hello, good evening.
I'm Ellen from Spellman Johnson, and we're a search firm serving higher education for the last 30 years. I'm going to take a slightly different tack tonight and sort of talk about some bigger picture things around the community colleges and the chancellor's searches. And then, of course, I'm happy to answer any questions. We've been having a lot of internal discussions within Spellman Johnson about institutional leadership and community college leadership specifically, because the current state of higher education is in such flux. It's clear we don't really know where we're going to land probably until the spring of 2022. It's also clear that all of higher education, public or private, needs to look different post-pandemic than it does pre-pandemic. So community colleges are not immune to so many of these issues, the shrinking enrollments, 20% or more declines, particularly in our underserved students, primarily with the market of low-income first-gen students. They have been communities that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID, and that means shrinking enrollments, means shrinking budgets. Adding to the costs just to contain COVID and all of those pieces is part of it. Declining state funding. It will probably never go back to the pre-COVID levels, and this leads to difficult questions around equity. So thinking for the community college is really thinking about these particular, how to decrease and eliminate equity gaps in student achievement. It's particularly difficult with the traditionally marginalized students because they're impacted in such a greater way. The digital divide, rural and metropolitan students, virtual learning, equity in virtual learning, access for students with disabilities. The list and the challenges are pretty comprehensive. Faculty and staff are still working remotely. While they may have adjusted somewhat to online learning, they still have to contend with family and tech difficulties, increasing mental health issues, food and housing insecurities, across not only with students, but we're seeing it in faculty and staff as well. When we looked at the pandemic, there's some things that were pretty higher education did pretty well. You know, they pivoted quickly. But as we look across and try to identify strong institutional leaders, we're looking at those chancellors and presidents that successfully rallied every corner of the campus and brought all levels of stakeholders to develop the 20 scenarios we needed for fall opening, or the 10 financial plans that they had based on the 15 estimates for final enrollment. I mean, it was about sequenced communications plans. It was about a willingness to consider all the ideas and energize teams to get to the goal. We think the two most important characteristics for chancellors moving forward in this landscape is the ability to bring people together and to energize the change process, because this is going to be one long change process in the next 2 years. We also believe some of the most important skills that community college leaders will need to possess is a fundamental understanding of the connection between enrollment to institutional solvency. So things like creativity in terms of programs offered, flexible online, hybrid scheduling, micro-credential programs, broader communication and more deep communication paths to constituents, businesses, employers, students. It's just going to be really critical. Secondly, chancellors need to possess experience in retention, persistence, and educational delivery. The national focus right now on delivery of short-term programs that lead to high-wage positions, reevaluating strategic and master plans, that's a good one, in lieu of all of the changing social and economic environments, looking beyond traditional ideas, being creative, things like financial aid cooperative agreements. There's all sorts of possibilities that they need to really see. And the third piece that's going to be really important is the ability to build financial stability, which includes revenue generation, reimagining the work of the institution's development foundation, auxiliary revenues, creating significant efficiencies that reduce expenses. You can't build, repair, and fix without resources. So in a search for a new chancellor, it's important that stakeholder groups become engaged in a little bit of self-reflection around the challenges and opportunities of the role and be candid with candidates in the process. It's especially true where there's been abrupt changes in leadership. The single most important part of this kind of leadership search is transparency and focus around what will be difficult and what will create forward momentum. In this environment, boards and institutional constituents have to be in alignment around the leadership profile for the new chancellor, as well as institutional priorities. We've done a significant number of these searches in a wide variety of community colleges, and we've also done presidential searches, and those are what we really see as fundamental, is understanding what the challenges and opportunities are and working with the board and the campus to really focus that on how we're going to do a search for this person and who that person is going to be, and then how we're going to evaluate that in the search process. So that's sort of the cornerstone of how we think about things at Spelman Johnson for these really big leadership searches. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Let me look through my list here. Trustees, questions? Trustee Bonilla.
Yes, Ms. Hefferman, thank you for that brief but in-depth presentation. You mentioned quite a number of things that I have on my mind, which is definitely around the pandemic and what we are going to look like post-pandemic, which we're unsure of. So the 20 different scenarios and all of the planning to try to figure that out. But you also brought up something else, which I thought was really interesting, and I'd like to hear a little more from you about that, this sequenced communication plan. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that? I have a feeling of what you're talking about, but I'd really like to hear you elaborate a bit more on that.
I think what we saw with chancellors and presidents who were really successful is they broadened and deepened, and I think that's what they need going forward. Communication plan. it's not just anymore about sort of the students. It's so much bigger than that. And it's involving many more constituencies that are in your orbit, and bringing them all together with just sort of different focuses for different communities, and really thinking through all of that. And those institutions that are doing it well are also starting to reap some of the benefits of that. They're really thinking more differently, cross-functionally, and with some broader ideas, and then pushing that out in a much different way to the different constituent models that they're looking at, defining it differently. I think it's been difficult, and I think to get the messaging right has been difficult, and to get the timing for the messaging right has also been difficult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Any other questions? Trustees?
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ellen, very much for your presentation. So then, Madam Clerk, if you could please move Ms. Heffernan out, that would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then, President Reese, would you let me go ahead and explain the process?
Yes. Yes.
All right. So if you may recall, trustees, hopefully everyone received it. We had sent a search firm selection form out, and that is simply a form to help the trustees make your decision. It's not a vote. In other words, however you fill out the form, we're going to give you the results back so that you can have those results during your deliberations, and then make your decision with regard to which firm you would like to choose as a board of trustees. So that's the next step. Mark Johnson is here, and he was gracious enough to create this form for us and for it to be used as a tool for you. And so Mark, if you could please explain the next steps.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chancellor McKinley. I am going to put a URL in the chat. This is to a very brief survey that lists the different search firms. And I would ask the trustees to click the link to the Google form, enter your name, and then rate the different presentations that you heard or on their match for the search form. The higher the number, the stronger the firm in your mind. So they're on a range from 1 to 9. Once you vote, let me know, and I'll go in and I'll do a quick tabulation and I'll share out the results. I've discussed with Vice Chancellor McKinley, we'll conceal your rating, your ranking here. So I'm just going to give back kind of the group totals.
Madam President, if I might, before we proceed, Madam President, can I say something?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. So a couple of things. If the URL is put in the chat, there's a way of excluding anybody who is not a trustee from that particular chat. If you can do a direct message, that would be great, so that we have a little bit of security on that informal poll. But before we vote, cast a that's just a straw poll. It's not an actual vote. I would love to hear from my colleagues some discussion about the presentations and the firm. I personally am not ready to cast even a straw poll vote, and would feel gratified to hear the thoughts of the board as before we start sorting. What do you think about that, President Reese?
Yeah, I agree.
I am good with that. Yeah, let's start the discussion then. At this point, whoever is ready to input feedback.
Can I have the name of the first group? If you can list the names of the groups in order, that would be really helpful.
Mark, can you do that on the chat? Is that where you want it, Linda? We can just do it on.
I'm having serious problems with the chat. It won't let me chat. It won't let me write to anyone.
Okay, let's just give it to you. AGB was the first one.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. McKinley. Myers McRae, MYERS MCRAE was the second presenter. RH Perry had the 3 individuals. They were the third. And then our last one was Spellman Johnson. And I'm just going to write that for anybody else who may need.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to hear what some of you all have to say as well.
Jump on in. Okay. Nobody's, Trustee Withrow, go for it.
I thought that all 4 of them had strengths. I think that each of the 4 could bring something to the table from the standpoint of coming up with a strong CEO. I did feel, not just the presentations, but having read their bio, if you will, that we were presented, that AGB had a larger scope and seemed to have more participation, quite a bit more participation in the western part of the United States and in the coasts than the other 3. The other 3 tended to be East Coast and southeastern part of the United States. And I felt that a number of things, without going into a whole lot of the details of what they put in, but the fact that they look at the experience of the CEOs that they put in for at least a year, I think is very positive. Yeah, I think it's very positive. Number 2, I like the idea that they have the numbers and quantify the diversity of the candidates that they've brought in and the diversity of the candidates they've been put in place. And I really like the idea that their candidates that they have placed spend about 5 years. That far exceeds what we've experienced here at Peralta. And it quite frankly, it's not just Peralta, it far exceeds the experience of what I've read among community colleges and throughout the state of California. So I just thought they were a very strong firm and would do a good job for us.
You're talking about AGB or Myers, the first one or the second one, in your last comment?
The first one.
The first one, AGB. Okay, yeah. Can I speak or someone else?
Trustee Polk or you, Trustee Handy, whomever.
Go ahead, Linda.
I was going to say, go ahead, Diana. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'll be very brief. Trustee Withrow kind of hit on all the points that I was thinking about as well with AGB. They just seem the most prepared. I really like that they follow the Chancellor for at least a year. I think that that's something that Peralta really needs. And they seem just the most prepared in terms of their written materials that were submitted. It was a very comprehensive proposal. And so they were the ones that stood out to me the most. Thank you.
I thought AGB was very strong. I was also impressed by RH Perry and Associates, but when I heard him say that they stick with them for a year, it showed me that there's someone that not only are putting people in place, but they've observed a problem with people that they placed in the past and have worked to find a solution to prevent that problem from going on. That's something that showed a depth of experience that I didn't pick up on the others. The RH Perry and Associates, I was not mad at them at all. They were they seem to be covering the country as well. But one thing to say that in terms of companies that deal with it doesn't matter that they're in another state, but you guys know we speak different language in California, and we especially speak a different language in the Bay Area. Our communities are different. Our diversity outweighs probably any other states, and our challenges do. And I think it's really important that people have done a lot of business or have worked with people so they can understand as they look at candidates what might be a good fit, not just for our colleges, but is that a person that will be comfortable in our community? Because even though they may be the best possible in a chancellor or whatever, if they don't care for the politics, the climate, and all of that California is, you know, we hear those things, California fruits, and we hear all of those statements that people like to say. And I often wonder, do they really mean it, or is it because of something they've seen on the TV? Why do they think we're all kind of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? I don't know. It could just be things that people say and they never question why they say it. But it is a shift in terms of our laws, our policies, and I mean, it couldn't be a wider gap than in terms of Florida. Things that you can do in some of the other states in terms of your these educational institutions and stuff, it just won't fly here. So having people who recognize the little idiosyncrasies that other people may have a challenge with, I think is a positive thing. Other than that, I appreciate the comments of Diana and Bill, and I know that Bill is going to read through every single thing and he's not going to miss anything. So that's why I was with Nikki, wanted to hear what the rest of you had to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Jenkins.
So I'm going to be brief because a lot of what I was going to say was covered by Trustee Handy, Withrow, and Polk. AGB ranked really high, and before Trustee Gonzalez said, hey, before we do the straw poll, let's discuss. I already did the straw poll, and the AGB ranked really high on my straw poll. Them and R.H. Perry, but what stuck out with me is they're going to follow the Chancellor for a year, and I think that's really important for us, considering what we've been through. And so that's why they ranked highest. Thanks.
Thanks, Cal.
Thank you. Any others? Trustee Bonilla.
Yes, thank you. I have a similar response to all of my colleagues. But one thing I do want to bring to your attention is that although it is a great quality to have a search firm that conducts follow-up and transition assistance, the last 3 searches that we have done have offered that particular service. So it's a common service. The issue is that your chancellors, once hired, in our case, have not taken that up. So we've asked, we've embedded it in as part of a coaching element. We've, in our last contract, have actually inserted it as a contractual agreement. So it's not something that, unfortunately, that chancellors once hired are amenable to. So we just need to think about that and as a reality. And so we need to be thoughtful and perhaps innovative in how we as trustees prioritize something like that and get that point across, especially if we're looking, if our candidate or candidates ends up being a new chancellor, meaning they've not been a chancellor before. And so there's just some challenges with that as we hire. I actually equally think that the top 3 firms that the rest of you have mentioned feel more than qualified to do this work.
Thank you. I will put forth my ideas unless Trustee Gonzalez UN, you have comments?
No, please go forward, please.
Maybe I'll start with who I was least impressed by. I don't know if that's
okay.
Go for it.
You can say it. We're just thinking.
It's okay. We're good.
This is public, unfortunately, but yeah, I think I was a little bit least impressed by number 2. At least for our, I'm sure they do fine searches for many, many places, but I think for our district, and that was Myers-McRae, it was not a fit. I didn't think as much. I thought that AGB was solid. It's a name we know. And even though none of these firms really focus on community colleges, California community colleges per se, I think that it is an organization that we know well and is therefore reputable. Like the many of you, I really went to the 1 year afterwards. And so thank you for the reminder, Trustee Bonilla. And even though that is part and parcel of what they do, which the other 3 firms did not articulate, it is not always taken by the chancellor that is hired. And so, that's something that we need to consider. I was really, of course, the 4th firm, it's a woman-owned firm, and I love that, and I think that's fantastic. But I do probably more so, appreciate AGB for this particular search. And I also liked R.H. Perry and the last firm. So I think I'm with you all in terms of the top 3, with a particular one at the top of those 3. Okay. And Gonzalez UN.
Had an interview with one guy his mother's 92.
I've just been really listening, and I still find myself quite perplexed. I noticed the last firm seems as though they have the highest cost structure, although it's pegged to the chancellor's salary, and I think it's a third of chancellor's salary. That remains to be negotiated, but I think the others were in the $60,000 to $70,000 range. So as much as I would like to pay a chancellor in that range, I have a feeling that might not happen. Don't know. Cost structure is not the most critical for me. And as we were going through the process, I found myself having a lot of questions, but then thinking, oh God, there's 7 of us. I've got like 5 questions for each firm. And so I ended up not asking anything, just kind of listening. I think for me, one of the critical questions really has to do with the way that each of these firms is thinking about, Linda, you'd raised the question about California in particular. It's a very particular animal. They're national firms, but I don't know that we've done great with our California-based searches. So I like the idea of having a strong national search, but then understanding the particular dynamics of our district, the value set of our district. I think, Linda, you nailed it. It's like the Bay Area. It's got its particular value set. And in particular, the way that we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's the terminology, or race, in our district is complicated. It's not black-white. It's a really complicated mix of ethnicities. And every chancellor must be particularly attentive to that, and the search firm has to be particularly attentive to that. I'm not sure, and I'd love to hear, if other of my colleagues here really picked up on their own, did any of these firms raise that particular issue and the nuances of that particular challenge in our district. And I was listening for it, and it didn't rise up for me. So I'm feeling like, well, each of these firms could probably do the job. I'm seeing a number of you leaning towards AGB. I don't have any particular objections, but they, again, didn't necessarily respond to those particular questions for me. And to be fair, I didn't ask them, but then I thought, well, if I ask one firm, I'm going to ask all four, and we just don't have the time for that here. So I'd love if anybody else has thoughts on those.
Well, I have a question for you, Nikki.
Yeah.
Nikki, I have a question for you. I think that's a good point. It's a very testy one subject to bring up. I don't know how a firm could formulate a presentation and bring that up without insulting. I mean, it's a very tricky. We know what the reputation is, but it may be difficult for someone to bring that up. That you have particular challenges with your state. But I think that this is something that we can have that conversation and ask as we're narrowing it down. That is something, and also something that we need to be real clear about in our request, that these are the things that we want them to be very much aware of, and to make sure that the candidates are also aware of what the particular pieces are California. I'd hate to have someone enter into the process and want to get into the process and then come in and say, oh my God, $5,000 for a shared studio, and freak out about all those things. And also the number of languages that we have spoken in our public schools. This is not the same in everywhere. But I think that everyone has to be aware. Any organization that's doing business has to be aware of these areas. I think, though, to ask them what their thoughts are would be something that we can do. What do you think?
I also trust that the committee itself will be, of course, very attentive to that. So I think what we need is a firm that is culturally sensitive and understands that their job is to empower a search committee, not to pick a chancellor for us. Right. So, I think that's really what we're looking for, is somebody who understands our inclusive process and the need to find that balance and create a setting where everybody feels listened to. Everybody feels as though, all right, my voice was heard. Maybe at the end of the day, the committee didn't go with my choice, but at least I got a hearing on the ideas and they were considered. So I think that's sort of the critical part. I think all of these firms could probably do that. I don't have a pony in this race. I want the best pony across the finish line, but I don't know who the best jockey is on this.
How do we feel? Can we, at this particular point, how do you all feel? May we move this forward?
I'd like to move nomination of AGB.
Second.
Okay. Roll call. Discussion.
Was that Trustee Jenkins who seconded?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And we had our discussion.
Do we want to try to use the straw poll at all to get a sense of that ranking? We've got that tool. It's not required that we use the tool, and we've got a motion in front of us, but we had laid out a process of straw poll.
I think for me, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, through the chair.
Yes.
The straw poll for me becomes less effective because at this point, only because there's a motion on the floor. So the straw poll for me, for instance, doesn't reflect kind of where I'm sitting at right now.
Okay. We've had our discussion, I believe. So roll call.
Okay. Student Trustee Yeruni.
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Withrow.
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins.
Yes.
Trustee Handy,
Yes.
Trustee Delphine Polk,
Yes.
Trustee Bonilla,
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez Yuen,
Yes.
and Trustee Reese.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes for AGB as the search firm.
Okay.
Wow, we were all on the same page. God, hey, let's.
That's awesome.
Yes, it is. That took about 45 minutes, but that
wow. May it be the way we move in the future.
Yes, yes. Okay, now let's move to 2.2. And this is the selection of the 3 community members from the Board of Trustees nominees who will serve on the Chancellor Selection Committee in accordance with Board Policy 2431. So let me just say on the outset that I have been mulling over since the beginning of our meeting, the conversations and the issues and the concerns. And we all know this is such an important search, given that it is for a permanent chancellor, our most important position, our only employee. And because we have individually and collectively articulated the desire to be a cohesive, collaborative, and professionally communicative board, what we don't want to do is to look back at this process down the line, knowing that we were not thorough enough, we were not transparent enough, or that our process was not free of potential missteps, right? So to ensure full support and full board participation in the process, I would like to, and I don't know if this needs to be a vote, I would like to table 2.2, accept the candidate submissions, nominations, and that we place the submissions on the January 19 board agenda. And you know, we'll figure out the situation because the chancellor will be there and she needs to be excluded from all of this. So we'll figure that out. But with that said, I also cannot emphasize enough how imperative it is that we really check. It's only our only form of communication because we don't have each other, we're not present, that we are diligent about our email. And if we cannot access our emails, that you need to let me know, you need to let the board clerk know well in advance so that we can mitigate and resolve the situations well in advance before the relevant meetings. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to, as a board, adhere to all of our deadlines because we need to be the model that we expect people to do all throughout the district. But like I said, I agree. I hear all of your concerns and your issues, and we got to do this right. And I just don't want to look back thinking that we didn't do something correctly. So
yeah, I appreciate your comments, Cindy, and I agree. But as I said, I just went through a search on all of the names on my AOL account, and I don't have emails. And this equipment, I know I actually have to have new equipment. This stuff that they've loaned me, I can't even access the chats and I can't move around. It's just not working that way. So, but I know at the last time, Jelena called us, the board president called us when they had not heard from us. And Brenda had also sent us reminders because we're doing so many other things and we're not expecting to be having this constant flow of emails around Peralta. Actually have other work and other boards that I'm on. But in this case, I don't know what's going on because Maisha gets through to me at all. So I don't know what's going on and I don't have one I look for McKinley and it's just not there. So let's just try to see what we can do. I know that we have so many changes and Maisha's doing an incredible job and not having had the knowledge transfer. She just hit the ground running. But there are some practices that come with the trustees that I actually just reminded Natasha of one, our 700 reports. That's information that comes out of our legal counsel office, but was put into another office. And if we hadn't brought it up, we could have all missed, if I hadn't brought it up, we could have all missed it because it's not going to come through Maisha's office because it was dumped in that office before Brenda left. So let's just try to make sure that some of the past practices that or expectations, that we let her know what those are. And then also, I'm going to see what we can do about getting a real piece of technology that I can work with here, and with Kevin's as well. And also people, AOL is the primary email for me. That, you know, so if you want to reach me, that's the best way. And I know, Cindy, you have reached me, but unfortunately, as I looked, that last communication is when we were talking a while ago. So I don't know what happened.
Okay.
No blame. Let's just fix this.
So for purposes of process, Dr. McKinley, how do we, is there anything that you need to let us know?
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes.
Madam Chair, through the president. So because you've tabled the item, there's no discussion on it other than an explanation from you on, and which is probably, I'm so sorry, what is probably what you were going to have Vice Chancellor McKinley explain, which is the process for extending the nomination of community members.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Dr. McKinley, could you let us know when you would like the submissions and all of that, the process?
Yes, thank you, President Reese and other trustees. The answer to that would be as soon as possible. So we're a week away from the next board meeting. If we could have them by, I would hope by Thursday of this this week, or Friday at the very latest, so we can get them posted. That would be very helpful. And
so do we post, Dr. McKinley? We post on Friday to, we usually have it ready by Thursday night, right? The posting for the Tuesday.
That's correct.
Monday? Okay, so then maybe Thursday, if our members are good with that.
To be Brown Act compliant, give staff time.
Thursday.
That is a requirement. And end of business day Thursday, or midnight Thursday?
Thursday would be fine.
So 5 p.m. Thursday.
5 p.m. Thursday.
And Madam Chair, or go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Ma'am, just recognize me, put me in the queue.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Trustee Bonilla, and then Trustee Gonzalez-Yuan.
So on this community, on the submission process, it's really important that we just not submit lists of names, that we actually reach out to individual community members. And so what's happened in the past is we've received a list of names, none of whom had been spoken to or contacted, other than the first time through the appropriate, the official channels of the district. And so for every name that you submit, it's understood that the trustee has reached out to that community member and briefed them about the process, because we're all familiar with the process. For the new trustees, if you're not familiar with the process, then just to have that discussion with your board officers, and they'll be able to share what a past timeline for the search process looked like. It's short in terms of the length of participation, but it's time consuming. As Trustee Handy had said earlier, there's a big commitment. You have to be able to commit to all the dates that the committee itself agrees upon. So it's important that we ensure that we are reaching out to our community members before we bring back their submit their bio and resume. Thank you.
Trustee Gonzalez-Yuan.
Thank you. I want to clarify the process for nomination of community members. As I read the board policy, it doesn't specify how community members are nominated. And I don't know whether we have an administrative procedure on that, but I want to make sure that the nomination process can also include our student trustee. Student trustee could put forward community candidates. I don't see that I don't see that in any way explained in board policy, but I wanted to make sure that the rest of the board is comfortable with that and encouraging of the voice of our student trustee. Are we good with this?
Shall we have legal opine on that, just to make sure that we are? okay within that? I mean, I'm probably yes, but let's just have Natasha.
Okay, thank you.
As Vice President mentioned, there's no reference in the board policy on the chancellor search for the nomination process. So the nomination process really is at the will of the board. And so it would be up to the board whether you included candidates that came from the student trustee or not. Technically, as long as the only limitation that you have in the California Education Code around the student trustees' participation is an exclusion from closed session, and they can't make they can only make advisory votes. They can't make votes. But suggesting names would be the equivalent of advising, and so I don't see anything that would prevent you from doing that. The board policy does, of course, have specific slots for student representation, and those obviously come, that is already embedded in your process.
So I would like to ask if there are any objections, and if there are not, I would like to encourage student trustee Mead to consider nominations, and then reiterate that when we put forward a name, especially at this time, we really want a biographical statement and or resume, something so that the entire board feels comfortable and it's not just this random list of names, that we really feel more informed, and to help staff out by getting that. I know Socorro Taylor reached out to me a couple of times, like really encouraging, got a name, make sure you got a bio. It's like, okay, it's on it. But thank you, Trustee Bonilla, for bringing that point up. And so I would just ask if there's objections, please let those be known regarding the student trustees' participation. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Trustee Gonzalo Yuan. Thank you for introducing me this great opportunity.
Great. Oh, Trustee Withrow.
Just for clarification, simple. By Thursday, we should have a new list. Is that right?
No, you've already, if I may, from I believe our conversation here, those that have already submitted, we're done. And then our individuals that still need to submit, they will submit by Thursday. By Tuesday of next week at the board posting, we will have a new revised list.
I can go back to sleep then. Thank you.
You can go back to sleep. Yes. Are we good so far? Okay. I just want to make sure that I have not forgotten anyone. All right, let us move on.
Really quickly, President Reese, can I just say I appreciate the opportunity to be able to nominate community folks. I was having issues with my email. I've been working with Maisha for the last couple of weeks to try and resolve it. It has finally been resolved. And so I didn't see the notice until right before the deadline. So I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to put some names forward. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you, Deanna. Thank you.
And Madam President, as a matter of procedure, I believe you've made a motion to table. I will second, but I think in order to complete, we actually need a vote to table the item.
We need a vote.
And carry it to the next
a motion
meeting.
was not made out just formally. So you wanting to make a motion for that?
I will formally make that motion. I'm just trying to clean it up.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, wonderful.
And so I think we needed a vote.
Okay, are we ready? Student trustee Yeruni?
Yes.
Okay, trustee Withrow?
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins?
Yes.
Trustee Handy?
Yes.
Trustee Delphine Polk?
Yes.
Trustee Bonilla?
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez Yuan?
Yes.
Trustee Reese?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. Let's move on to 2.3, consider approval of the appointees from constituency groups to form the Chancellor Selection Committee.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Discussion. We've got a first by Trustee Bonilla, second by Trustee Withrow, and discussion. So you all have the members and the constituency representation on your list or in your board docs.
Is this 2.2? This is 2.3.
Right, 2.3, yes.
Madam President,
Yes.
if I can be recognized.
Yes.
Is there a way prior to our next week's vote to get an ethnic breakdown of the committee? I think what we're trying to do is have not only constituency representation, but also demographic balance. And I don't know all of these people or how they identify ethnically. I think that will probably be part of our consideration as we look at community representation. But it's not clear to me exactly how we do that process and like that. So if staff can speak to that question through the president, that would be helpful, I think, for me and maybe the rest of the board.
Dr. McKinley?
Yes, I can do that. Thank you very much, President Reese and Vice President Garcia-Yun. Yes, I can give you the ethnicity and gender breakdowns of the constituent members that have been nominated. Jennifer Sanowski, of course, with PFT, is a Caucasian female. Francis Howard is an African-American male.
Through the chair, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can we get a legal opinion as to whether it's appropriate to read out gender and ethnicity?
Yeah, I don't think
on this.
I
just want to be careful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee.
Dr. McKinley.
Thank you, President Bonilla. While I don't think you violate a technical rule, I just think, Vice Chancellor McKinley, my recommendation would be if you would just like give a total, like you are represented.
Okay, I can do that, yeah.
Categories, and that way the board can surmise, because how someone self-identifies, we'll leave to them.
And I don't need that at this moment. I think staff could come back. I don't want to be doing it on the fly. And I don't know that we're in a position of rejecting it.
For this question, with President, we're prepared for this question.
Thank you very much.
But and this item is agendized for action tonight.
So we're going to get an overall summary from staff on this.
At this moment, I believe.
Thank you.
If we could just give Dr. McKinley a few minutes.
All right, so I've got that. Thank you very much. So there are 11 members from the constituency groups. 5 of those members are African American. 3 of those members are Caucasian. 2 are Hispanic and 1 is Asian. There are 3 females and 8 males.
Thank you, Dr. McKinley.
You're welcome.
Trustee Handy.
Yeah, as I look at this group, it's not different than the last group. I mean, I'd like to see some new names. I don't know if we can, if the person from 1021 always has to be the president and cannot be a member. Are the people from the unions always going to be the presidents? You keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. And there are diversity of faculty and staff in terms of different people, not the same name. So when I look at it, it's like, okay, there's some changes, but I don't see really, I pretty much see the same voice. And hopefully some community members will change it a bit, but basically it's the same voice. It's the same voices that we always hear. It's the same pretty much labor intensive or labor people who have relationships with that, as opposed to a representation of what we're here to do. How are you going to get to that? I don't know, but I'm just not. I mean, when I look at this, these are the same names that we hear all the time, the same names that we see. And that is just not expanding, though trustees are never going to be on these committees, but the same people can, again, be on those committees. Then you get into a problem of basically kind of control. Oh, I've been on this committee before. People defer to their opinions because they've had that experience before. It would be nice to see fresh eyes on the process and more inclusiveness in other members.
Yes, so, to your earlier point, Trustee Handy, I'm just looking at the board policy, which is why my gaze is averted here. So I would say again, that consideration would be something that we would go through the process of, because board policy 2431 specifically states which constituency groups and the number, and therefore who ends up being put forth is going to be dependent on that particular constituency group. Though there are some new members on it for sure that haven't been, at least in the previous 1 or 2 searches, or actually the last search that I was a part of. So I think that your point would be, in order for us to be able to do something about it, needs to go through the policy, the board policy. And then we would be able to discuss, adjust accordingly, or do whatever needs to be done, but it needs to go through that policy process. Okay. Am I missing any other Trustee Julina, Trustee Kevin, and then, Dr. McKinley, did you have your hand raised?
No, I've been trying to unraise it, but I'm not successful.
I would just ignore your hand, and then Trustee Withrow. So let's go in that order.
Thank you, President Reese. And you answered the question. I was really thinking about process, and you've brought up the process. And when I look at this list, 8 out of the 11 members who have been selected were not part of the last search. So that's significant. That's a significant difference. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Trustee Jenkins, and then Trustee Gonzalez-Yuen. I think Withrow is gone.
So in the future, maybe through board policy, I want to look at how we select the students. I'm a bit uncomfortable with administration just selecting students or forwarding names. I want all students to have the opportunity to say, hey, yes, I do want to serve on this. And there's a lot of students out there that might not even know this is going on. So just in the future, if we could look at it through board policy about how we approach that process, it'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
I second that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Trustee Gonzalez.
There needs to be an ongoing process of inclusiveness, even with the student trustee elections. We usually have 2. And if we only have 1, again, how far, in light of COVID, we have to do something different than we did before, because we have to reach them. I've never felt so distanced from students as I do now, except for on the Tuesdays and Thursdays I spend out doing the food giveaways. It's a really tough one because everyone's in their homes, and so we need to. And students, not just student government. Sometimes students are in student government because a faculty member or an administrator saw something in them and encouraged them, which is what we want to do. But there's so many other who may not have had that opportunity, who again should have the same opportunity to run for student trustee or to be a part of this process. And maybe our student trustee may have some ideas of how we could better reach our students during this COVID time, so that we don't feel so remote from them and that they feel that they are still being included. None of this is intentional, but it's just a result of COVID. How do we have that connection that we had before? I'm used to sitting next to a student trustee and having one of it. And for all the years that I've been here, I've always been very close with the student trustees as we try to identify the person that is really going to onboard them and carry them through. And that's another thing too, that if you can put in your notes, President Reese, is that we have not had that dedicated administrator who is taking the responsibility for onboarding the student trustees, making sure they have all the information that they need, not just, here's your laptop and here's this, but the committees and things that they need to be involved in. It's not limited to their campus. They're representing all of the 4 campuses. And we have struggled, and we've never had that one office in the district office and that one person that is going to be the one who's going to make sure that the student trustees know about everything. And I'm hoping that during this time, we can make that happen.
I think that's
so that, yeah. So if you can just put that in your notes, Cindy, I know you'll get it, it done.
Yeah, I mean, we thought that we were just going to be in this situation for 3 months.
Yeah, and we need to look at this with a different set of eyes, because it may be longer, and we have got to create that robust interactive relationship, even if it's going to be through this.
Agreed. And I think I have one more person. Trustee Gonzalez-Yuen, do you have another comment?
Yeah, I didn't quite get in there. I think one of the things we need to note here is that we need administrative procedures on this policy. I'm looking and I can't find them. And so it's not clear, for example, how, like, we're supposed to approve constituent group representation. That's why it's in front of us. I think the standard practice is that those constituent groups put forward their own representation. So, for example, the classified Senate, the leadership of the classified Senate has its process for figuring out who to advance, etc. It's not clear, as Trustee Jenkins pointed out, how students were appointed to this committee or nominated to this committee, but presumably we would want the student leadership, the elected student leadership of the district, to be engaged in that process. So, I think Vice Chancellor McKinley, if you can flag that as a piece of administrative, I don't direct you, via the board president, via the chancellor. This is something that must be flagged for future work. And I wanted to just come back, Vice Chancellor. I was trying to write down the numbers, and I think you said there were 8 men, 3 women. I don't know that I heard representation, campus representation, which is part of the board policy, that each campus needs to be represented. So I didn't see that. I got 5 African Americans. I think you said 2 Caucasians, or was it 3? Could you just read those numbers again? They ran by as I was looking for a pen.
Sure,
absolutely. And I just missed it. Thank you.
No, yeah, that's fine. 5 African Americans, 3 Caucasians, 2 Hispanics, and 1 Asian. That's the ethnic mix. I can tell you very quickly that as you may recall, there is no term that's going on right now, so reaching students was not easy.
Exactly.
And what we did was reach out to the vice presidents of student affairs and ask them to nominate students to serve on the committee. 2 of those colleges, BCC and Merritt, responded. The other 2 colleges did not. 2 of them were from Merritt. 1 was from BCC. The one from BCC is the Asian male. There was an African female and an African male that were nominated as students from Merritt, and we selected the African female to help improve the diversity of the group. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
And then the overall campus representation of the overall committee, we've got 11 members. I think you said 8 women, 8 men, 3 women, and then campus by campus, what was the breakdown?
All right, so I'll be frank with you. I don't have that right in front of me except for the students. Well, we have
I'm fine to get that back later
Laney
then.
College. I can't remember where Donald Moore is.
That's Laney.
Is that also Laney? Then
but he's representing his constituent group and not the college.
But
right.
he's a faculty member at Laney
Right,
College.
yeah.
That's right. So
you could.
I don't need this right now.
Okay.
Trustee Gonzalez Duran, you
I
need
can get it to you, right.
And
Thank you
then
very
just
much.
One more thing I wanted to add to that is, I think that rather than, it's great if you can get a vice president, but they're going to get the person that they know, the student that's around the office and stuff. I think that we need to utilize the student emails or something and send it out, because students are not participating in government as much as they have before, because they're, that's an interactive thing. And they're like, we'll wait until COVID is over and then I'll be more engaged, where I can actually see people and we're going and we're doing things. So I think that we should reach out, just send an email that goes out to all students. When I take students to Washington, it's a leadership conference, but I take all students. I'm not looking for leaders because some students don't know that they're leaders yet. And so I am looking, that's a whole process of coming into the community college. And many of the students that I've took, maybe, 2000, one of the students that I took back in 2008 is the executive director of the organization where we're doing the food drives from. So I think it's just important that we leave it open to all students. And this is something we haven't had a discussion about before, but I think because of COVID that we need to, I think, just not depend on our student governments to get the messages out and stuff, because it just doesn't exist in the way that it has in the past. Let's just contact students directly and see, and then they'll know or they don't know. They'll choose to or choose not to.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Polk, and then I believe that was at the end.
Yes, I have a quick question. So of the constituency group list here, can you repeat how many were on the last Chancellor Search Committee versus new folks?
I don't know, so I can't. I wasn't here, so
we can probably very quickly, President Bonilla, we can probably quickly look at this as to how many were on the last. So 1, 2, 3. I think 3 were on the last. But Trustee Bonilla, can you confirm this with me? I just want to make sure that I am saying this correctly. But
I think you're right. I just took a quick glance at it just by recognition of numbers. I recognize 3 names, and I do not recognize the other names as being participants in a search process, not in the last 2 or 3 searches.
Richard Thole was not in the last one, right?
Pardon me?
Richard Thole was not in the last search?
No.
Okay,
no.
Yeah, so 3 were on there. The other 8 are new or are on this. Okay.
Thank you.
So let us now vote. Roll call, please. Madam Board Clerk.
All right. Student Trustee Urani.
Yes.
Trustee Jekin. I'm sorry, Trustee Whitbrow. You're muted, Trustee Whitbrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Thank you. Trustee Jenkins.
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Handy.
Dane.
Okay. Trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes.
And Trustee Bonilla.
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez-Yuen.
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Reese.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. And I believe that that is the end of our meeting because we took 2.4 off the agenda. I just want to confirm where we are right before we adjourn. So we will, Dr. McKinley, you're expecting any and all submissions from our 3 board members plus our student trustee by Thursday at 5
Business Thursday, yes, please.
Okay, by this Thursday at 5 p.m. And then we will all vote on the new slate of community members on the Tuesday, January 19th meeting. Okay.
And again, Cindy, is there a form that you want sent? I know I've heard in the background, but I was reading on the other screen.
Excellent question, actually. Clarification. So the clarification is if you could include a bio, and if they have a resume, that would be great, but just a bio so that we all have information about the individual members.
Okay, so contacting the person first to make sure that they want to do it. Then if they do bio and resume.
Yes. And for my individuals, I just wrote the bio on them. But for your individuals, if you want to write the bio for them, or they can write their own, whichever.
Oh, they better have their own bios.
Okay. And then I think that is it. Are we good, everyone? Thank you all for your time tonight. Yes.
I'm looking at just the vote that we just took to confirm the committee, and I don't know every single person here, but as near as I can tell, the College of Alameda does not have representation, and we just need to, I believe board policy requires representation from every campus. I'll just leave that for our future consideration. I may be incorrect. So I'm seeing Jennifer Shinosky saying that Terrence and Benny are both from COA. Thank you very much. Okay. And that's the 2 I didn't know where they worked. So I'm good. I have announcements when you're ready.
I do. I have an announcement for our closing. I'd like to close in honor of, are you ready for that?
Do we want to do that at the very end?
I'll do that at the very end.
Can I just
read your regular?
If now is the appropriate time.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Upcoming holidays in the district. Monday, January 18th is the MLK holiday, and district offices and campuses will be closed even more than they currently are. But it will be a holiday, and let's all celebrate that holiday if we can, please. Our next regular board meeting is Tuesday, January 19th. Coming up sooner than we all know. Next week, oh my goodness. All right, and enrollment is open right now for spring 2021 classes. Classes are getting prepped to go and register. It's a great time to get enrolled. And I will pass it back to you, President Reese.
And Trustee Handy, please close this off.
Yes, I just want to say Merritt College has had another tragic loss with the passing of Dr. Bill Love this morning. It's in 1 week, we've lost Dr. Love and Dr. Anita Black, of their founding members of PAW. They are the institutional memory of everything Peralta, and it is a shock. So just hold in your heart and prayers for the family of Bill Love and Anita Black, but also for Merritt College president and staff. And people are just reeling. This information just came this morning, and it's heartbreaking. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay.
I'd love to have Dr. Love here to fight with him one more time, because we fought for all of these years.
All right. Trustees and colleagues, let us adjourn.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.